$500? I stared at the letter, my jaw practically hitting the floor. For what, exactly? The Fossil Creek Estates Homeowners Association letterhead glared back at me mockingly. Violation. Aesthetic non-compliance. Exterior energy apparatus. Apparatus? They made my solar panels sound like some kind of Frankensteinian contraption. This was insane. This was Rex Power. I should have known. I crumpled the letter in my fist, a familiar wave of frustration washing over me. I, Ethan Miller, was officially at war with the HOA. Again. And it all started, predictably, with my attempt to be a responsible, eco-conscious, money-saving citizen. Let's rewind, shall we? I'd always been a bit of a tree hugger, in a practical, spreadsheet-loving kind of way. I recycled, I composted, and I'd recently made the leap to solar power. Not a massive array, mind you, just a modest set of panels on the south-facing side of my roof. Sleek, black, professionally installed, they practically blended in. And they were saving me a ton of money on my electricity bill. Plus, saving the planet. 1 kilowatt-hour at a time. I was proud of them. My little contribution to a brighter future. Literally. Fossil Creek Estates, however, did not agree. Our lovely HOA apparently had other ideas. It had all started innocently enough. I'd researched everything, made sure there weren't any explicit rules against solar panels in the HOA's labyrinthine bylaws, there weren't, and gotten all the necessary permits. The installation went smoothly, the panels looked great, and my energy bills plummeted. I was feeling pretty smug. Then came the first sign of trouble. A small, almost polite, notice tucked into my mailbox. Dear Mr. Miller, it read, the Architectural Review Committee has noted the recent addition of solar panels to your property. While we appreciate your commitment to energy efficiency, we have some concerns about the visibility of the panels from the street. We request that you attend the next HOA meeting to discuss this matter further. Visibility. As if my solar panels were some kind of offensive billboard advertising sunlight. And so I found myself in the hallowed halls of the Fossil Creek Estates Community Center, facing the firing squad, or, as they preferred to be called, the HOA board. The room was the usual beige box of boredom, adorned with faded landscape paintings and a motivational poster that read, "Teamwork makes the dream work." The irony was palpable. The board members sat at a long table, a collection of Rex's loyal followers, mostly older folks, the kind who probably thought sustainable was a type of fabric softener. And then there was Rex, Rexford Rex Power, the HOA president and the bane of my existence. He was an older man with a permanent scowl etched onto his face, a wardrobe that consisted entirely of polo shirts and khakis, and a vehicle of choice was a gas-guzzling SUV that probably got about 5 miles to the gallon. He exuded an air of old money and a deep, abiding suspicion of anything that smacked of progress or, God forbid, environmental consciousness. "Mr. Miller," Rex began, his voice dripping with disdain, "let's talk about these panels." He said panels as if they were some kind of alien infestation. "They're solar panels, Mr. Power," I corrected, trying to keep my voice calm and reasonable. "They generate clean energy. They reduce my carbon footprint. They save me money." "They're unsightly," Rex declared, ignoring my explanation. "They detract from the property values of our community. They're simply not in keeping with the character of Fossil Creek Estates." "The character?" I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "What character? Beige siding and meticulously manicured lawns?" I thought the character was suburban conformity, not anti-renewable energy. A few nervous coughs echoed around the room. Rex's face turned a shade of red that clashed violently with his, presumably, fossil fuel-derived polo shirt. "This isn't about the environment, Mr. Miller," Rex said, his voice tight. "This is about rules, and the rules clearly state that all exterior modifications must be approved by the Architectural Review Committee. There was nothing in the bylaws about needing approval for something to help the environment," I pointed out. "I checked multiple times." "The spirit of the rules," Rex said, with a dismissive wave of his hand, "is to maintain a consistent aesthetic, and those things on your roof are simply not consistent with that aesthetic." He might as well added his thoughts on my panels being a conspiracy to take over. "So what are you suggesting?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "I'm suggesting," Rex said with a smug smile, "that you remove them. Immediately." The other board members nodded in agreement, like a flock of well-trained and probably overpaid sheep, except for one. A younger woman, maybe in her 30s, with a look of quiet skepticism on her face. She didn't say anything, but I caught her eye, and she gave me a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. A glimmer of hope? "I'm not removing them," I said, my voice firm. "They're legal, they're beneficial, and frankly, I like them." Rex's smile vanished. "We'll see about that, Mr. Miller," he said, his voice a low growl. "We'll see about that." The meeting was adjourned, with no resolution, but with a clear sense of impending doom. Rex Power was not a man to be trifled with, and I, Ethan Miller, had just poked the bear, a very large, very beige, very anti-solar bear. The hammer blow fell a week later. Not a metaphorical hammer, of course. The HOA preferred to deliver its blows via official, certified mail. The letter was short, sweet, for them, and utterly infuriating. "Dear Mr. Miller," it read, "the Fossil Creek Estates HOA Board has voted to implement a new amendment to the community bylaws, effective immediately. This amendment prohibits the installation of any exterior solar panels due to their negative impact on the aesthetic harmony of the neighborhood. You are hereby ordered to remove your existing solar panels within 30 days. Failure to comply will result in significant fines and potential legal action." I stared at the letter, my jaw agape. They banned solar panels? Banned them? In this day and age, it was unbelievable. It was outrageous. It was war. My blood ran cold, then immediately began to boil. This wasn't just about saving money or being environmentally conscious anymore. This was about principle. This was about fighting back against arbitrary rules and power-hungry HOA presidents. This was about revenge. The injustice of it all fueled me. They thought they could just change the rules, bully me into submission, force me to dismantle something that was beneficial, both to me and to the planet. Oh, they had no idea who they were dealing with. I wasn't going to take this lying down. I was going to fight, and I was going to win. My first step was research. I needed to know if this ban was even legal. I spent hours poring over state and local laws, searching for precedents, looking for any legal argument I could use to challenge the HOA's decision. I consulted online forums, spoke to solar energy advocacy groups, and even considered calling a lawyer, but I wanted to see how far I could get on my own first. The more I learned, the more confident I became. HOAs had power, yes, but they weren't all-powerful. There were limits to what they could restrict, especially when it came to something as beneficial and widely accepted as solar energy. But I wasn't just looking for a way to keep my existing panels. I was looking for a way to escalate, to make a statement, to show Rex Power and his cronies that they couldn't just push me around. And that's when I found it. The loophole. It was buried deep within the convoluted, jargon-filled text of the Fossil Creek Estates HOA bylaws, in a section titled Architectural Guidelines. There was the usual blather about maintaining a harmonious aesthetic and consistent design. But then, there it was, a clause that stated, "Alternative energy sources are permitted, provided they are integrated into the architectural design of the home in a manner deemed aesthetically acceptable by the Architectural Review Committee." "Integrated into the architectural design," I muttered, a slow smile spreading across my face. "Aesthetically acceptable." The wording was vague, subjective, open to interpretation, and Ethan Miller had a very creative interpretation in mind. The plan, when it came to me, was so audacious, so over the top, so utterly ridiculous that I almost dismissed it. Almost. But the more I thought about it, the more I loved it. Operation Full Coverage was born. I wasn't just going to keep my existing solar panels. I was going to cover my entire roof in them. Every square inch, front, back, sides, everything. My house would become a giant, gleaming, solar-powered monument to HOA defiance. I'd argue that the panels were now integrated into the architectural design because, well, they were the roof, they were the house. It was so absurd, so visually impactful, so utterly unignorable, that it was perfect. I could already picture Rex Power's face, his jaw dropping, his eyes bulging, his carefully constructed world of beige conformity crumbling around him. The thought made me giddy with anticipation. It was time to go solar to the extreme. The next day I called up SunPower Solutions, the company that had installed my original panels. "Hey, remember me?" I said to the sales rep, a friendly guy named Dave. "Ethan Miller, over in Fossil Creek Estates?" "Sure, Mr. Miller," Dave said. "How are those panels working out for you?" "They're great," I said, "but I need more. A lot more." "More?" Dave sounded confused. "How many more?" "All of them," I said. "I want to cover my entire roof." There was a pause. "Your entire roof?" "Every square inch," I confirmed. "Front, back, sides, everything. I want my house to look like a spaceship landed in suburbia." Dave started to laugh. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," I said. "I'm having a little disagreement with my HOA, and I want to make a statement." I explained my plan, laying out the whole saga of the HOA ban, the loophole, and my vision for a fully solar-powered home. "Mr. Miller," Dave said when I was finished, "you are my hero. This is going to be epic. And you know what? Corporate will love this. The free advertising alone. I'm giving you a discount." We discussed the technical details, the type of panels, high efficiency, black on black for maximum visual impact, the power output, enough to power my house and probably half the neighborhood, and the installation schedule as soon as possible. Installation. Phase 2 was a sight to behold. Crews of workers swarmed over my roof, transforming it, panel by panel, into a gleaming, black expanse of solar energy. Neighbors gathered on their lawns, staring in a mixture of astonishment and amusement. Cars slowed down as they drove past, drivers craning their necks to get a better look. My house, once a perfectly ordinary, if slightly solar-enhanced, suburban dwelling, was becoming a landmark, a beacon of renewable energy, a monument to HOA defiance. There were a few minor setbacks, of course. A sudden rainstorm delayed the installation by a day. One of the workers accidentally dropped a panel. Thankfully, no one was hurt. And Fluffybutt, my neighbor's chihuahua, kept trying to help by barking at the installers and chasing after stray wires. But overall, the process went smoothly, and with each panel that was installed, my satisfaction grew. I'd walk around my yard, admiring my handiwork, imagining Rex Power's apoplectic reaction. It was beautiful, it was absurd, it was perfect. And the best part? The neighbors loved it. Several stopped by to ask about the panels, to express their admiration for my bold move, and, of course, to get Dave's contact information. It seemed I wasn't the only one in Fossil Creek Estates who was tired of the HOA's tyranny. Operation Full Coverage was not just a personal victory. It was a spark of rebellion, igniting a solar revolution in the heart of suburbia. The unveiling of my fully solar-paneled roof was, shall we say, dramatic. I'd timed it perfectly, ensuring that the final panels were installed just as Rex Power was returning home from his daily round of golf, in his ridiculously oversized, gas-guzzling SUV, of course. I was standing in my front yard, admiring my handiwork. It did look a bit like a spaceship had landed on my house, but in a good way, I thought, when Rex's car screeched to a halt in front of my property. He emerged, his face already a mask of fury, even before he'd fully taken in the sight before him. "What?" he roared, his voice echoing through the otherwise quiet street. "Have you done?" I turned towards him, a picture of calm innocence. "Good evening, Rex," I said, my voice smooth and even. "You're referring, I presume, to my new roof?" "Your roof!" he shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at the gleaming expanse of black solar panels. "You've turned your house into a spaceship." "It's an integrated alternative energy system, Rex," I corrected, quoting the HOA bylaws directly. "Perfectly compliant with Rule, what was it? Oh yes, alternative energy sources are permitted, provided they are integrated into the architectural design of the home." "Integrated?" he sputtered, his face turning a shade of purple I'd previously only associated with eggplants. It's covered. It's monstrous." "Think of the energy savings, Rex," I said with a shrug. "I'm practically off the grid, and I might add, doing my part to reduce our community's carbon footprint. Unlike some people," I added, glancing pointedly at his SUV, "who seem to believe that fossil fuel is a lifestyle choice." Rex's eye twitched. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, and finally managed to choke out, This is insane. You can't just cover your house in solar panels. It's un-American." "Actually, Rex," I said, "it's quite American. Innovation, independence, embracing new technology. It's the future, Rex. Try to keep up." I'll have you fined," he stammered. "I'll have you evicted. You'll do nothing, Rex," I said, my voice firm. "Because I've followed the rules. Your rules. And now, if you'll excuse me, I have to go admire my spaceship." I turned and walked back towards my house, leaving Rex sputtering in impotent rage on the sidewalk. He was going to need another emergency meeting. The emergency HOA meeting was, predictably, a showdown. Rex, looking like he hadn't slept in days, probably because he'd been too busy obsessing over my roof, was in full-blown meltdown mode. This monstrosity," he declared, pointing to a large, projected image of my house now gleaming with its full solar array, "is an affront to everything Fossil Creek Estate stands for. It's a blight on our landscape. It's solar anarchy." He'd even brought in a so-called expert, a smarmy-looking guy in a cheap suit who claimed to be an architectural aesthetician, whatever that is. This expert proceeded to drone on about the negative impact of solar panels on property values and the importance of maintaining a cohesive visual harmony. It was all nonsense, of course, and I could tell even some of the board members were starting to roll their eyes. Then it was my turn. "Mr. Power," I said, addressing Rex directly, "seems to be under the impression that I've somehow violated the HOA bylaws. I assure you, I have not." I presented my case methodically and calmly. I cited Rule, again, about integrated alternative energy systems. I showed them data on my energy savings, highlighting the dramatic reduction in my electricity bills and my carbon footprint. I even presented a slideshow of other houses around the world with fully integrated solar roofs, demonstrating that my design was not only functional, but also aesthetically pleasing, in a modern, eco-conscious kind of way. And just for good measure, I'd printed out a petition. I also have a petition signed by over 50 residents of Fossil Creek Estates, and placed it before them, who support my solar installation and appreciate my efforts to promote renewable energy in our community. The board members were clearly divided. Rex's usual sycophants were still nodding along, but the others, they were starting to waver. They looked at the evidence, they looked at Rex's increasingly frantic demeanor, and they looked at the growing crowd of supportive neighbors who had gathered outside the meeting room. Word had spread quickly. Then, a woman from the back of the room stood up. She was a representative from a local solar energy advocacy group, and she'd come prepared. "I'd like to commend Mr. Miller," she said, her voice clear and strong, "for his commitment to sustainable energy. Solar panels are not only environmentally friendly, but they also increase property values and reduce energy costs. The HOA's attempt to ban them is not only short-sighted, but also potentially illegal." That was the final blow. The board, sensing a public relations disaster and a potential lawsuit, voted to table the discussion, pending further review. The meeting ended with Rex's authority completely shattered, his face a mask of defeated rage, and me, Ethan Miller, the solar-powered rebel, emerging victorious. The tide had turned. The sun, quite literally, was shining on my side. The aftermath of the emergency HOA meeting was swift and glorious. My house, or rather my roof, became an instant sensation. It started locally. The Fossil Creek Gazette, a surprisingly well-read community newsletter, ran a front-page story with the headline, "Homeowner Defeats HOA with Epic Solar Panel Installation." The article detailed the entire saga, from the initial complaint to the final showdown, emphasizing the David versus Goliath aspect of the story and, of course, the sheer audacity of my response. They even included a picture of my house, gleaming in the sunlight, looking like a futuristic, eco-friendly fortress. Then, the story went viral. Local news channels picked it up, then regional news, then national news. Suddenly, I was getting calls from reporters all over the country, wanting to interview the solar panel rebel, the HOA Avenger, the guy who'd stuck it to the man with renewable energy. My house became a backdrop for news segments, a symbol of defiance against outdated rules and power-hungry bureaucrats. The internet, of course, loved it. Memes were created. Tweets were tweeted. My fully solar-paneled roof was even featured on a popular website dedicated to epic homeowner wins. The best part, though, was the reaction in Fossil Creek Estates. Inspired by my example, and I suspect by the prospect of lower energy bills, other homeowners started installing solar panels. Not as extensively as mine, of course. I'd pretty much cornered the market on extreme solar, but enough to make a noticeable difference. Within a few months, Fossil Creek Estates was starting to look less like a bastion of beige conformity and more like a showcase for sustainable living. And the HOA? They were powerless to stop it. Rex's attempt to ban solar panels had backfired spectacularly, creating a loophole that I, and now many others, had gleefully exploited. They couldn't change the bylaws without facing a massive backlash and potential legal challenges. They couldn't target individual homeowners without risking further public humiliation. They were, in a word, defeated. Rex Power's downfall was swift and brutal. He faced a recall vote, organized by a coalition of newly energized and solar-powered homeowners. The vote wasn't even close. Rex was ousted from the HOA presidency in a landslide, replaced by Susan, the surprisingly assertive board member who'd spoken up at the emergency meeting. But it didn't end there. It turned out that Rex's obsession with aesthetics wasn't his only flaw. A few anonymous tips, ahem, led to an investigation into the HOA's finances, and, lo and behold, they discovered some irregularities. Missing funds, unexplained expenses, suspiciously large payments to consultants who just happened to be Rex's friends and family members. Rex might even face legal consequences. The investigation was still ongoing, but the word on the street, and in the Fossil Creek Gazette, was that Rex was in deep trouble. He'd gone from being the all-powerful ruler of Fossil Creek Estates to being a pariah, a laughingstock, a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked authority and an irrational hatred of solar panels. As for me, Ethan Miller, the accidental revolutionary, life was good. My energy bills were practically non-existent. I was actually making money, selling excess energy back to the grid. I'd become a local hero, a champion of sustainable living, the guy who'd taken on the HOA and won. I was even invited to give a talk at the local library about the benefits of solar energy and the importance of standing up to bullies. But the best part? The quiet satisfaction of knowing that I'd made a difference, that I'd fought for what I believed in, and that I'd inspired others to do the same. Fossil Creek Estates was changing, one solar panel at a time. And it all started with a little bit of defiance, a lot of sunlight, and a ridiculously over-the-top response to a power-hungry HOA president. The future, it seemed, was looking bright. Very bright. It's been a year since the Solar Showdown, as the local paper dubbed it. A year since I turned my roof into a giant, gleaming symbol of defiance against the Fossil Creek Estates HOA, and specifically against its then-president, Rexford Rex Power. And I have to say, it's been a good year, a bright year. My solar roof is, without a doubt, my pride and joy. It's a conversation starter, a local landmark, and a constant, shimmering reminder of Rex's spectacular defeat. I still get a kick out of seeing people's reactions when they first see it. The double takes, the dropped jaws, the whispered, "Is that all solar panels?" It never gets old. And, of course, there's the practical benefit. I haven't paid an electricity bill in months. I'm actually making money, selling excess energy back to the grid. I'm practically a one-man power plant. Fossil Creek Estates has undergone a transformation. It's still a suburban neighborhood, with manicured lawns and mostly beige houses. But there's a difference, a sparkle, a glint of sunlight reflecting off solar panels. They're popping up everywhere, on rooftops all over the neighborhood. Not as extensive as mine, of course. I remain the undisputed king of solar coverage, but enough to make a noticeable difference. It seems my little rebellion sparked a revolution. A quiet, environmentally conscious, money-saving revolution. A new family moved into Rex's old house a few months ago. Rex, I heard, is now living in a small apartment, powered by coal. The new neighbor, a young woman named Jessica, stopped by one afternoon while I was, adjusting my solar panels. Mostly just admiring them, to be honest. "So," Jessica said, gesturing towards my roof with a curious smile, "why does your roof look like a giant solar panel?" I grinned, leaning against my now solar-powered fence post. "Oh," I said casually, "just an HOA misunderstanding." Jessica raised an eyebrow. "A misunderstanding?" "Yeah," I said, nodding. "Long story. Involves a power-hungry HOA president, a ridiculous ban on solar panels, and a loophole in the bylaws. Let's just say things escalated." Jessica laughed, shaking her head. "Well," she said, "I think it's amazing. It's bold. And it's definitely saving you money." "It is," I agreed, "and it's a constant reminder that sometimes you have to fight for what you believe in, even if it means covering your entire house in solar panels." And as I stood there, bathed in the warm glow of the afternoon sun, my solar panels humming quietly above me, I felt a deep sense of satisfaction. I'd taken on the HOA, I'd fought for my right to embrace renewable energy, and I'd won. Fossil Creek Estates was a brighter, more sustainable place, and I, Ethan Miller, the accidental solar revolutionary, had played a small part in making it that way. Of course, the battle is never truly over. There's always another HOA rule to challenge, another bureaucratic hurdle to overcome, another opportunity to enhance my property. I've been thinking about installing a wind turbine, or maybe a rainwater harvesting system, or perhaps a giant, solar-powered robot that patrols the neighborhood, enforcing good vibes. The possibilities are endless. And as long as there are HOAs and outdated rules, I'll be ready, armed with my solar panels, my bylaws, and a healthy dose of rebellious spirit. Bring it on. The future is bright, and it's powered by the sun.